Walter Moore and his cousin, Poopy McMillan, run a local public access show called Tussleville Talent Tonight. They uncover messages from beyond the grave, deep in their memories. Messages sent from their Uncle Dan, who died before they were born. Walter, Poopy, and the residents of Tussleville go on an adventure to learn the secrets of time and space when they discover the magic spot.
Hey, welcome to Movie Friends. My name is Seth.
And I am Michelle.
Today we're talking about Magic Spot from 2022. Directed by Charles Roxburgh, written by Charles Roxburgh and Matt Farley, cinematography by Charles Roxburgh, composed by Tom Scalzo, edited by Matt Farley. Starring Matt Farley, Elizabeth Peterson, Chris Peterson, Kevin McGee, Charles Roxburgh, Tom Scalzo, Teresa Peterson, and Sharon Scalzo. Michelle, how are you?
Hello, Seth. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing better after recording our conversation. We are recording this on Wednesday, November 6th, 2024.
Yes, so there you go. Some context.
Yep, and so future generations, we did press record and you can listen to us. But yeah, I didn't have a great morning. I guess I'll say that.
Yeah, same. I mean, you're another year older, so happy birthday.
Yep, my birthday was on Monday.
Yeah.
So, worst birthday ever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm 36 and feeling sick. That's what I keep saying. So yeah, what's going on with you?
Same, without officially turning a year older. I feel like I've aged years. And we are aging every day, so.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
You know who doesn't age? Uncle Dan in the Beyond. Or does he?
No, because he's dead.
Well, Tess is older.
Right, because she's aged. She's living.
Right, but that would mean that Uncle Dan was the age that Uncle Dan is now.
Oh my God.
Anyway, hey, before we get into our discussion on Magic Spot, we got an email.
Ooh.
Subject line is The Invisible Man.
Wow, this is like the gift that keeps on giving.
I know, Invisible Man. Folks, you got to watch this movie.
You have to watch this movie.
You got to go back and listen to the episode.
Please watch the movie.
It says, "Hi, movie friends. I was scrolling the other night and noticed The Invisible Man was available to stream. I had never seen it, so I figured, why not? And watched it. I get why you both enjoyed it. It's big, it's silly, and even over 90 years later, you have to appreciate the special effects. You asked, so I will offer my own happies and crappies. My happy. Michelle's fascination with scientists. Perhaps in another life she was one. In any case, I love this niche interest and think you should explore it further. Wow, maybe Michelle was a mad scientist in the past.
I think so. And I've been one. Well, anyway, continue.
My crappy, at no point did you mention that Gloria Stewart is the older Rose in Titanic. I knew she had been an actress. Yeah.
Why did you tell me, Seth?
I knew that. I don't know. I don't like Titanic, maybe. So I just brushed it away.
Titanic was like my life. Well, that's my fault. That was my movie. I'm not yelling at you. I should have done better research.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I know. Gotcha. Oh, okay, continue.
I knew she had been an actress in old Hollywood, but had never seen any of those movies. So it was an unexpected surprise to see her here, even if she didn't add much to the story. And this is from The Visible Woman, Betsy.
Betsy! Thank you so much. Thank you, Betsy. I don't want to move on from thanking you, so thank you. Allow for it. Pause. But when do you think it's not going to be something I can say with like, Seth, why didn't you tell me? You're the movie guy. Like, when does that rhetoric stop for me?
I think you're there, man. I mean, think about it. Michelle, think about it. High and Low, The Invisible Man, Jennifer's Body, And now today, Magic Spot, you're experiencing just the fullness of all of moviedom.
Moviedom. Is that
Mhm.
an actual word? Moviedom?
That's when I say what I don't like a movie. Movie dumb.
You know, we could add that to the rating system.
Oh yeah, movie dumb.
Moviedom.
Yeah. Speaking of ratings, before we get into our discussion, we're going to predict what the other person is going to rate the movie. I have a pen and a pencil. I've got my notebook. This is the most prepared I've ever been.
Wow. Okay.
Now, I was on a streak. I had guessed 3 in a row, and then I failed last week.
If
So
you get, are you locked in?
I'm not, but let me write it down. This is a weird one. Okay.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
locked
locked
in.
Whoa. If you get this, you can read my mind. So then I'm freaked out and
Okay.
we can't do the show anymore. So, hey, at the beginning, you gave me some notes of how I should say my name. I need to take that with respect.
So listeners, Michelle, at the beginning of season 2, I was like, Michelle, you have to talk earlier in the episode. Like, it's just me going on and on and on and on and on. So we should say like, I'm Seth and I'm Michelle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been like I wouldn't say a struggle, but what has that experience been for you?
I mean, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Also, I thought it got better. I never think about it, but now I'll be thinking about this for weeks to come.
Oh no, it is. It's good. But when I edit the episodes, every time I edit and I'm Michelle, I think Michelle hates saying this. She hates it. And so last time I was editing an episode, I was like, "Oh, I should suggest maybe say, and I am Michelle."
I really that was
So I don't know what's
okay.
better.
I don't know what's better. That's fun though. Maybe you could give me a way to say it and I'll come in and do it. But now that people know, just take this all out.
Michelle is my name.
Right.
We'll see.
We
Yeah,
could
we'll
play
see.
with it. You could take this all out and just leave it and don't see
Right.
who's the first to write in about it.
Right.
Why is Michelle saying her name like that?
Today is a very special episode.
Yes.
This is an episode 2 years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Magic Spot. You watched this for the first time, and we'll hear a little bit about that in the discussion. But we don't really talk about movies before recording, and I was like just on pins and needles all week.
You know, you never told me why you chose this one for this month.
I have been agonizing over which of these movies to pick. I did like a Twitter poll months ago.
Wow.
And I said, what's the best, Roxburgh Farley movie to watch to introduce to someone? And a lot of people said, Don't Let the River Beast Get You. And that was the first one that I watched, but it wasn't the first one that I like loved.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really conflicted. And then as time went on, I was just like, I got to do Magic Spot. It's got to be Magic Spot.
And it's the second week of Sethvember.
Right.
So this fits into, if we're doing the journey of Seth, last week was from childhood. This one just totally inspired you falling into this universe.
Well, yeah, this was like, okay, I've seen low budget stuff and I've seen independent stuff, but I've never seen this.
Yeah.
And I think that these movies, more than anything else in like life, are very inspiring to me, that people should be making things for themselves and that they can. You can do it if no one is giving you money to do it, and you can do it if people aren't watching. You can just do it.
I find it so interesting, as we'll hear with our conversation with Will, both of you very much on this. People should watch this so then they can realize they can make a movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the only reason, right? To me, I'm like, no, people should watch this for just like an hour and a half of cozy and calm, and you don't need to make anything from this. You just went to a safe place.
Right.
As
Yeah,
a viewer,
Yeah.
And so that's like, well, I'll save it. Yeah.
We're joined today by modern day folk hero Will Sloan,
Wow.
as his Twitter bio tells us.
Okay.
He's a co-host of the Important Cinema Club and the Michael and Us podcast. He's also a film writer, film critic, and he literally co-wrote the book on the Motern movies. It's called Motern on Motern. I reached out a little while back and was like, would you please join us to discuss Magic Spot? Not knowing, if he'd be like, I got important things to do. I'm an important man of letters, But turns out that he loves this movie as much as I do. So he was very gracious enough to join us.
Yeah, he was great. It was exciting. That was an exciting day when he said yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go over to our conversation with Will Sloan on Magic Spot. I feel like I could talk about this movie for like 4 hours.
I'm ready to hear you guys talk about it.
Yeah.
It's definitely fast becoming one of my most rewatched movies.
Nice.
Yeah. I think, in fact, I'll go so far as say it's becoming one of my favorite movies. I really love this movie.
Yeah, I just rejoggled my
Rejoggled. That's fun.
my Letterboxd top 4, and I was like, it's got to go back in. I mean, it's kind of, and it's not even my favorite Motern movie.
What's your favorite Motern movie?
I think my favorite is Metal Detector Maniac. I just find that one so funny.
I mean, the way it crescendos. I mean, I love all of them. Metal Detector Maniac, I think, is probably the best example of, what you can do if you have no one to answer to. Like, imagine trying to pitch that concept to anybody.
Right.
And also just imagine like having that idea and then going through the process of, like, they shot that movie over years. Imagine committing years to that idea. It's awe-inspiring.
I need to watch this now.
You do. So yeah, this was Michelle's first Motern movie. And
wow.
This is really like my first dip into this world.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
So, wow.
I'm excited to hear what you think. And, there are no wrong answers.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Obviously, as everyone says, there's some acclimation that's involved.
Yep.
I hope at the very least you're curious.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I feel like there's so much to say about this movie, but then there's not. And I'm more curious of the inspiration for this, how you guys discovered this movie, when you watched it, what you first thought when you watched it. Did you watch it with an audience by yourselves? Yeah, I have a whole list.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you the sort of long and circuitous route that led to this. I have a friend named Peter Kaplowski, who's a film programmer in Toronto, who years ago, I think like 2008 or something, he was working at a festival and he got a screener for a movie called Freaky Farley. And either he couldn't convince them to show it, or he didn't have the clout, or didn't have the fight in him to show it. But he liked it and it lodged in his mind. And then probably circa 2015, 2016, he checked in on them again and found out that Charlie and Matt had created this whole world. And checked out Don't Let the River Beast Get You, which is kind of the one that a lot of people see first and is a kind of great entry point to this world. Not everybody who sees it immediately loves it, but the ones who do tend to then become obsessed with this world. And I remember Peter showing this movie at this little film festival that he created called What the Film Festival, which was a festival for movies that for whatever reason he couldn't get programmed into real film festivals. And going to see this movie and just having this, like, honestly, it's one of the best movie going experiences of my life, where it starts and I immediately clock it as, oh, this is one of those like bad on purpose, this is sort of Birdemic, but homemade kind of thing. Not really looking forward to the full 90 minutes that this is going to take. And then within about 5 minutes, sort of thinking, oh, wow, this is kind of funny. And within like 30 minutes thinking, oh my God, this is a work of genius. Just the act of like, the easiest pitch you can make is, what if the kids who made movies in their backyard with their parents and a video camera, and they only had their parents or their uncles or their cousins or whatever, because you're a kid and you can't get actors. What if they went off to college and then came back and continued making those movies with the uncles and the parents and all that? And, if you want to get sort of academic about it, you could suggest that there's like a kind of media satire inherent in these movies where it's like, well, imagine if there was a buddy cop movie that starred my uncle. Why can't my uncle star in a movie?
Right.
Why aren't people like my uncle in movies?
Right.
Isn't there a kind of poetry to my uncle's presence? I don't think that's necessarily something that they're consciously thinking when they make these movies. Maybe they are. I don't know. But committing to the bit, River Beast is a great example of this because, it's this like kind of surprisingly elaborate, surprisingly quite well made movie that has 10 different subplots, quite expertly manipulated, like plates spinning in the air, all acted by friends of theirs, and just like committing to the bit so hard. I think the movies, in addition to being really funny, raise a lot of interesting questions about like who gets to make movies,
Yeah.
what counts as a movie, what is the line between amateurishness and professionalism?
Mm-hmm.
How much of is what we consider amateurishness ideological, et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
But that sounds very highfalutin. I mean, ultimately, these movies are very funny, and if you keep watching them and watch them over and over again, you come to really love these people and these worlds, and you'll see the same people, in movie after movie. Over the course of the 25 years they've been making these, you see people get older, you see people have kids, and then the kids become part of the movies. It's an amazing family that emerges. And if you're politically conservative, you might say that these movies are examples of these two rugged individualists against the system, with a lot of entrepreneurial moxie. If you're more politically left leaning, you might say that there are great examples of communal spirit. And taking on the system and hierarchies of high and low, and both are true.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
As people who watch a lot of movies, right? Sometimes you watch something and it really affects you. Sometimes you watch something and it's just another thing that you've seen. But these films demand a response from you, and it really makes you have to stop and say, well, what do I think movies are? What do I think acting is? Why do I not make movies if these people are doing it and doing it well? I came to the movies first as well. River Beast kept getting recommended to me on Tubi, and I would see the thumbnail, and I literally just kept saying, I'm not going to watch that, which is weird because I love low budget stuff. I love homemade stuff, weird stuff. But for whatever reason, I was just like, I'm not going to watch this. And I was looking for a new movie podcast to listen to, and my gold standard is I will search for movie podcasts that have covered the movie Clifford. Because if you've covered Clifford, and depending on how you feel about it, more than likely I will enjoy what you have to say about movies.
Absolutely.
So I found No Such Thing as a Bad Movie podcast, which Will's co-host Justin DeClue does with
Colin and April.
Yes, yeah, April Mansky and Colin
Cunningham.
Colin Cunningham. Yeah, I'm terrible with names, but yeah,
it's all good.
So I started listening to that, and then I'm scrolling through their old episodes, and I see they have an episode on River Beast, and I was like, it was this like lightning bolt moment of like, wait a minute, what? And I drove straight home, watched River Beast, and I was so confused. I didn't like love it at first, but it was that thing of these are people who know how to make movies. Because so often when you watch something that's truly bad, the question is, haven't they seen a movie before? Don't you know?
Yeah.
Don't you know what an establishing shot? Don't you know there are certain things? And
well, I remember.
This,
sorry,
like,
I'll
do.
let you. There's a moment I remember watching River Beast for the first time where Sharon Scalzo says, my professor was an indecorous deviant. And I thought, okay, like it takes an insane vision to make your friend say it as if phonetically, indecorous deviant. And the fact that everybody's talking like that and they're talking in these cliches, like there's an incredible internal logic and
Yeah.
coherence
Oh yeah.
to the worlds of these movies, which, you know, you may be sort of initially shocked by the quote unquote amateur aesthetic of them. But, you know, if you watch them with an open spirit, like you'll see that there is that coherence, there is that
Mm-hmm.
logic that makes
Yep.
them, you know, you can't dismiss that.
Yeah. And so then it becomes a stylistic choice. And that is what Charlie and Matt are so good at, is like, no. Yeah, we don't have a lot of money and we don't have all this equipment. We don't have big crews, but everything up there feels like a choice and it feels like it's on purpose. Now, if you listen to them talk about it, so many things are circumstance and
As in any art, yeah.
yeah, but there's such like confidence behind it.
Absolutely. And also, I would say, you know, a movie like Kevin Smith's Clerks
Mhm.
has, it comes from a similar like creative impulse. It's also made out of his friends and family, and also has a certain amount of quote unquote amateurishness. And it can be difficult to determine where does amateurishness end and the intent begin.
Right.
But you know, that movie has the advantage of having been championed by a couple of very important people early in its life, and then got, you know, the endorsement of Sundance and Miramax, which, by the time it arrived in theaters, it had the sort of people were predisposed to give it the benefit of the doubt, whereas I don't think Matt and Charlie have had those advantages.
Mhm.
It's funny, some of those movies have existed on YouTube. You know, they've sold them to various like low rent horror distributors who have channels like Kings of Horror, where they just play,
Mhm.
you know, all sorts of cheap horror movies, and that's just one of them. And some of those uploads will have, I don't know, 600,000 views or something. You know, people who clicked on it once and then didn't look at it. But the people who actually like the movies, they tend not to have had your experience of like finding it on Tubi and giving it a shot. It tends to be it was recommended to them from somebody else who was that champion and were able to put a lens in front of it through which to understand it. It's odd to me because like I look at the movie and it seems kind of apparent what it's doing, but for most people it seems there needs to be some sort of context behind it, or some sort of champion to almost like give people permission to like it, you know.
So, Michelle, we're setting you up horribly because now
Not really.
but like for you, you know, you're watching this for the first time and I know just from, you know, talking to me
Yeah.
daily, you know
Yes.
very much about Matt Farley and these
Yes.
movies and the music. And after I went down the rabbit hole, it became like, oh, along with Clifford, my life's work to to get people to watch
What
these.
year did you discover, Seth?
So
If
it would
you
have
can
been
remember.
it was the year that I watched the 1,000 movies. So it was what year was that? 2022?
Sounds like a pandemic year to me.
Yeah. It would have been smart if I had done it in 2020. Yeah. I think it
Yeah.
was 2022.
I think that's
Yeah.
right. You were on your mission when we started
Yeah.
talking about this
Yeah.
show. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I interviewed Charlie for this show and I said, I was like, I watched in that year so much Bergman and Varda and just the greats, you know, Kurosawa. And then also I watched all these movies from, you know, Roxburgh and Farley, and it was like some of my favorite stuff. But anyway, Michelle, you watched this for the first time.
I did. Yeah.
It's okay if you didn't like it, by the way,
Oh.
even
Yes,
after
yeah.
all that intro.
Yeah.
Honestly, everything you guys said is kind of how I felt. The first with like 2 minutes, I'm like, this is either the worst thing I have ever watched or this
Yeah.
is the best thing I've ever watched.
Yeah.
Right.
And then as it's continuing, I'm like, wait a minute. This feels like a cozy Christmas holiday movie.
Mm.
That's what
Mhm.
this is, the hot chocolate, the
Mhm.
small town, trying to convince the love of your life to stay.
Mhm.
Even the sci-fi element of you can call it Christmas Matt, call it whatever you want. It also to
Right.
me gave the feeling of a Gilmore Girls episode of
Oh,
Yes.
interesting.
very cozy, no stress, quirky small town patrons. I mean, even troubadours. So
Yeah.
by the end, I
Oh,
was
good
like,
point. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, huh, I am invested. I am very, very invested. And I'm
That's what I love. Yeah, like the way it sneaks up on you, and by
it
2/3 of the way
really
in,
does. That's exact. It
yeah.
is snuck. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to this rock. How also like not for nothing, tight storytelling. Like very
Oh
like a
yeah.
sci-fi element and so much sci-fi. And I love sci-fi and I love especially time travel. And Seth and I have had so many discussions on it. And there's always just like plot points where you're like, this is loose. There's a loophole here. How can we connect? We're just gonna accept. And here it's this makes sense in this world. And also, we're not trying to like save someone. We're just
Yes, right.
going back to a moment.
Uh-huh.
Also, the message of living for the moment and be aware of the moment and absorb the moment. But also, it's okay to record so you have the memory to look back on. Yeah, I thought this was great, and I'm bummed that my husband didn't watch it with me.
Oh,
Aw.
Because
yeah.
Anthony would have loved this, but it doesn't mean we can't watch it again. So
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
yeah.
I was telling Michelle before we started, I normally, if it's something I'm revisiting, I normally try to watch something like twice before talking. I've watched this. I just finished my 5th rewatch of this for this episode, and it was the Blu-ray commentary with Justin
Oh yeah.
Decloux and Matt and Charlie, and just hearing them talk about the movie. That was my first time watching it with the commentary. So it's so rewatchable, this movie, I think.
I just, I only watched it once, unfortunately. So there's just like little things I wrote down. But I mean, I have to think that certain cuts were deliberate. I mean, we're doing this on purpose. There's a shot of the hot chocolate of Walter reaching for the hot chocolate. It's such a weird angle. And I'm like, this has to be on purpose.
For me, the most ambiguous moment is when he shows the pizza with the provolone on top. Like this town has the best pizza in the world. And you look at it, it's the most disgusting pizza you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And she says, why do they put the provolone on top of it? He says, I don't know. It's just how they do it here. It's great. Nothing better. And it's very ambiguous as to how good that's actually supposed to be.
I think also what got me is nobody is questioning law. No one's questioning anything.
Yeah.
We're just going with it. What also adds into this holiday movie, small town. I'm watching a cozy series on a streaming service. I got a kick out of that.
That speaks to that internal logic in these movies where, the running gag of the movie is that somebody will say some ridiculous new rule like, oh, you go on a magic spot in the woods and you say what year it is, and it'll take you to that year, but it has to be a year where you were born, and you can only interact with children under the age of 10. But if you put a little twig behind your ear, you can talk to adults, and people will say it, and the person will say, oh, that makes sense. And if one person in the movie had responded, wait, that's insane, or that's ridiculous, something would have broken. But because the movie is the movie is so careful to establish its rules, not just in like the science of its time travel, but also in how people react to it, how people converse with each other.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Also, even like adding in maybe a slight villain factor if you want, antagonist of the two with the light bulb salesman, but no, they're fine. They're just future sons going back. It worked for me too. I was like, I have no problem with this.
The fact that everyone is good,
right? They say no bad guys. There are no bad
Yeah.
guys in this. Yeah. There is conflict because once Poopy realizes, like, oh God, like Dan is stuck there. Like that's torturous and that's hellish, and you start to think like, oh yeah, that would be pretty bad. They take care of it, but this film is so great for many, many reasons. But one of the reasons why I love it is because as a movie person, there are certain rules that have been established. And one of the things that's often, critiqued about other films, but here it's so deliberate that you love it, is exposition. in this movie, this movie is like 90% exposition. It's almost never challenged. Once someone says something, it's just, oh, okay, that makes sense. There's not really experimenting. It's just like, well, maybe this is what it is. When they're at the trailhead troubadours, and Randy to the Max is just like, I don't know, maybe it's because they're kids or whatever, or maybe it's a ghost. Maybe I've seen ghosts. And so it just flies. It just works. And I love it because this movie stretches, like we were saying earlier, it just stretches your concept of what is acceptable. Because I think if you showed this screenplay to any, Hollywood type, they would be like, no, you can't do it. You can't
I
have
think
long sequences of just explaining what's happening.
Yeah, my friend Matthew Kumar has a Letterboxd review where he says something like, the Farley Roxburgh movies show that every rule that you learn
Mm-hmm.
about good filmmaking and good screenwriting is fake.
Mm-hmm.
Because all what matters is the ability to draw people into your world, and then you can do anything. But that doesn't actually mean you can do anything. Like there has to be a sort of friction there. There has to be a tension. And yeah, there has to be that logic and coherence. But if you can pull off the magic trick of bringing people into the world, then yeah, all of those rules of good filmmaking, like don't have too much exposition, can fall away.
Yeah. We were talking about stylistic choices. It's incredible to just name a character Poopy McMillan and you don't really explain it. I actually never knew the reason. Oh, I knew why it happened, but Matt's explanation was, yeah, it's not because of poop. It's because he's pooped. He sleeps all the time. So he's poopy.
I just took it as cousins be
Wow.
cousins. Here's a
Yeah.
nickname.
Right. Yeah.
I heard another reason was that, one of the reasons, many of the characters are named after, Justin did a Kickstarter
Yeah.
campaign
Mm-hmm.
for a project of his where one of the things you could win was the ability to name a character in a Motern movie. And there were so many kind of weird or ridiculous names that they wanted to neutralize it by having one of the main characters be named Poopy. Give the main character the most ridiculous name so that that immediately establishes the terms of the world.
Right. Yeah. So Elizabeth, Matt's wife, said, well, that's crazy. What if someone submits a name like Poopy? And Matt was like, we're going to use that even if they don't submit it. I don't know. It's just like having confidence in your choices, and then the audience is just like, okay, we accept it. If you're someone who makes something, if you build a house, right? All that you're going to see are all the problems with the house that nobody is ever going to notice. And if you walked people through that house, they'd be like, you built this? Oh my goodness, this is great. But you're going to ruin it by being like, yeah, but that's like an inch too low. And this is, and oh, I had so much problem. And it's like, just don't do that. And people will accept what they are presented.
Do you guys know the inspiration for this story?
They don't fully know the inspiration for the story. Like they said that they were kicking around different ideas, so they wanted to make a winter movie,
Okay.
not necessarily a holiday movie, because they do have the Motern Media holidays Christmas special, I think it's called.
That's right. Yeah.
So they were like, we want to make a movie, and they wanted to make a movie where everyone was nice. Because they were tired of watching horror movies with fighting.
Are there other movies different, or is this like kind of the foundation for a Motern movie?
Well, it's interesting. Like there are a couple of different, I guess, phases of their career, but like
Mm-hmm.
the classical Motern film, from like Freaky Farley, River Beast, Monsters, Murder, Marriage, and Mance Vegas, and Slingshot Cops. Those are all like genre parodies, particularly like indebted to the horror or slasher genres. But then once they started to develop kind of a cult fandom of cinephiles, they were like, well, maybe we can do something that's not like a monster movie. What if we did something that was noirish? So they made Heard She Got Married, which is this, like, it's funny. It has a lot of humor, but it's darker and more thoughtful, and
Mm-hmm.
has a some yeah, more troubling elements than their other films, is more dramatic. And
Yeah.
then because of the kind of bad vibes of that movie, they then, I guess, sort of instinctively decided to go the exact opposite direction with this one. Like, yeah, what if everything's nice? What if there
Hmm.
are no villains? What if we ramp up the sweetness? So I think they're
Mm.
very, and because they don't answer to anybody, they can do whatever they want. The fact that the one they did after this, Boston Johnny, is just built around, what if my character had this like ridiculous voice? That
Hmm.
seems to be the what are the implications of making a movie where I speak with this voice for 2 hours? And yeah, there's nobody to tell them no. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, they
Yeah.
just have great instincts. Like they
Yeah.
have a very strong sense of what's funny.
Yeah.
It's hard to answer. Like, I really take their work as a whole. I mean, obviously, I like some more than others, but like Will's been saying, when you continue to watch the movies, it's like this whole world and logic is like laid out before you. Like, for example, repeating things. So I can't remember how many times they do the Tussleville lighthouse poem thing in this movie, but it's
Mhm.
like, again, if you were writing a movie, you wouldn't repeat something that much. But as you watch their other movies, you'll see that there's like phrases that they just kind of get stuck in their craw and it will be repeated, but then it will kind of have an importance later on that you don't quite realize. Their style isn't so much like, oh, is it like Magic Spot or River Beast? It's just like them and what they find funny.
I would also say that this movie is very typical in the sense that, especially their recent movies, will begin with kind of a ridiculous idea. And then
Mm,
it will say, what if we followed that ridiculous idea to its furthest possible logical conclusion? And what if you keep just accumulating strange detail, as that snowball rolls down the hill?
mhm.
Mm.
So, Michelle, when you watch this, did you think that the Committee of Light were like bad guys?
At first, because the music that even is playing when they
Mhm.
show, I mean, it's a total tonal change.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's what they're showing us.
Were
So,
you shocked when they
when they're
when
like,
they
"We're
said,
your sons?"
"Wait, Daddy"?
I
Did that throw you for a
was.
loop?
That did throw me. But the first thing I even like noticed when it was when we learned about the stick behind the ears and I noticed they had it. And I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh,
Got
what are
it.
you here for?" And also we're setting them up when they come to the studio and the light almost drops on Charlie's character,
Yeah,
the
yeah. Jimmy
station
Overstreet.
manager. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, that almost dropped." And they're standing there. So I was like, "What is this? What are these two? What's the deal?" But
Hmm.
they're fine.
They
Yeah.
came to give the light bulb to
Right.
Matt's mother
Right.
so that he wouldn't have to go home. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
incredible.
And it's all
Um,
tied together, which we always appreciate. Seth and I always talk about like everything is so layered and makes sense, and
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
appreciate that.
So in alternate futures, there's a version where Melanie dies. And so she's not there to remember the poem for
Mhm.
them later on. And so they go back and Stick Boy saves Melanie. Eh,
Yes, love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
loved that.
And then
Yeah,
there's one where Charlie dies or Jimmy Overstreet dies. And so
yeah,
he's not there to help with the newfangled remote, whatever.
yeah.
That actually might be after, but he's going to be important for the recording of the appearance of Uncle Dan. There's a version where Poopy dies because H isn't there with the chests of ice. And
Hmm.
so it's a really interesting way of doing a time travel story because we don't see it from all of their perspectives. In a lot of time travel stories, you see, the protagonist will, oh, I got to try it again. I got to try it again. Reset, reset, reset. I got to keep going back. We don't see that part of it. We see the present that they are continually trying to fix. And in that scene with Jimmy, as he's hockeying the carpet, there's two sticks on the ground. And so they are there in the room waiting
Hmm.
to see if it works. And once they see it works, then they put the sticks behind their ear so that they can see them. So it's like, how many times did they stand there and watch Jimmy die potentially?
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to say that scene where they tell Farley that they're his sons, actually I find kind of devastating.
Wow.
Yeah, I find it very moving, and I think it's completely unique in the whole Farley Roxburgh oeuvre, where like the affectless style of the acting, it achieves something, and I'm sure when Farley hears this, which he will, this will be the sort of thing that like he laughs at, or that he would make fun of me for, but like it reminds me of Robert Bresson, you know,
Ooh.
where Bresson would have these theories with his films about he would always hire these non-professional actors and
Hmm.
do take after take until they drained all emotion out of their
Right.
performances, until they're just like the body,
Hmm.
and he would shoot them very unfussily until like the pure like, so there was no cheapness, there was no artifice, there was no artificial stimulus for the drama had to carry itself, the emotion had to carry itself, and I think there's something like that in this scene. I see this scene where there are these two boys who like are coming from a time where their father isn't there anymore, and their
Hmm.
father has never met these boys yet, and imagine going back to a time when your parents didn't have it's almost inconceivable. They're like completely different people, and yet but when he pulls them in and they like hug, I don't
Hmm.
know, I just
Hmm.
find that incredibly powerful. It's this this guy.
He's crying right now, folks.
I know.
So emotional.
Or I'm getting over a cold. I mean, it could be either of those things, but
One of those two things. But yeah, it is great. Absolutely love Jay Mayo and Milhouse G as
mhm.
the future sons, and they do pull off like just being so mysterious. Like Michelle said, when you first see him, it's like who are these guys? They're approaching Walter's mom. What's you know that something's going on behind the scenes, but
Mhm.
I'm curious, Michelle, what did you think of H?
Well, at that point, I was like, "Oh, I know what her deal is here. She's here to make sure because of the weather. There was such a drastic change in
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
weather temperature, and
That's a
so
warm breeze.
that's right. So we have to make sure when Poopy gets back that he will acclimate." And I was like,
Yeah.
"That's so I get what's going on here."
Okay. So
Yeah,
did you put together that that's Melanie's daughter?
that I did not put together.
Okay. Yeah. So that's Melanie's daughter. Past self sees herself walking outside. She says, Mommy, a hiker.
I
And
did.
Melanie's like, that's right.
I just thought that was another person in the beyond.
Right, right.
And maybe we
Mhm.
don't know who they are, but just to show that there are other people walking around in the beyond. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Michelle mentioned, we love time travel movies, but as much as I love Primer, great movie, another great example of someone basically making a movie by themselves and, great success, God bless them. But like, I hate when time travel just gets so bogged down with rules. And
Mhm.
this movie has awesome fan theories and possible plot points, but it's all wrapped up when Poopy says there are many, many rules to this magic spot that we don't yet know. And so, how are Walter's kids coming back to a time before they were born? Because one of the rules of the magic spot is you have to go back to a time that you were alive, right? How does Uncle Dan figure out that if you fall asleep on the magic spot that you can pull someone out of the like?
Yeah.
So you could kind of start to think of like, oh, maybe there's some plot holes, but that one little line just kind of does away with all of them.
Yeah, it's
Walter's
amazing how
generation, they don't know.
yeah, like this movie exists at this sort of intersection of taking the rules very seriously and committing to them, and then also not taking them seriously at all. I don't know
Yeah,
how it how it pulls that
right,
off,
right.
but it does.
Right. And the stick behind the ear is a great example of that. Like you would think, okay, we need to write that they need to be able to communicate somehow. Put a stick behind there.
Yeah, exactly.
Good enough. And then like H seeing herself and Hadley seeing her future self, in a normal time travel movie, that would create a
Yeah.
paradox, or that would be, oh, here, who cares? Who
Yeah.
cares? What difference does it make?
Yeah.
So there's a theme of the cold makes you tough. I also didn't know this until listening to the Blu-ray commentary that apparently Tussleville means like tussle, like a fight. Like they were they were like, we wanted to express that all of these New England people are like tough and could at any moment get into a fight, even though no one does. And
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
I love kind of the commitment to like small town and hey, we've got candy cigarettes. Cancel
Oh,
culture
yeah.
has not reached Tussleville to the point where this is the only place on earth that you can still buy candy cigarettes. Who cares? Let's buy a whole carton, right?
Yeah.
Will, do you guys have candy cigarettes up in Canada?
Not that I know of, but you do occasionally still see those like Popeye candy sticks, which I think they're not.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about, right? They're
I
these
don't
little
think so.
cardboard packages. You've never seen these? They have Popeye the Sailor on the box, and they're candy sticks, and they're white and tubular, and they're kind of chalky, and they're not actually. Yeah, that's it. You got it. They don't actually look literally like cigarettes, but that's all we ever used
Is
them
it like a
for, to
pipe,
pretend
like
to
a
smoke.
corncob pipe that Popeye smokes?
No,
No?
it should be. It's just a
No?
white stick. It's just a
Yeah.
white stick that is unmistakably meant to be
Oh yeah,
pretended
that's
to
like
smoke.
that's I
Yeah.
think like candy cigarettes
We
here.
we
Yeah,
got
yeah.
a hookup of a candy guy in Canada. We can get some of those.
We do. We
Yeah,
do
that's
have a
right. You know.
candy hookup guy. He
Yeah.
just brought
Yeah,
us a
just
bunch of
meet me in the
Canadian
alley down
candy.
the street. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is this the most appearances of hot chocolate in any single film? Does this hold that record?
See,
Oh
I think
wow.
no, because I watch so many Christmas movies, like
Okay,
on Lifetime,
good
and that's
point.
what I'm saying. This feels like just like this is the only town where you can get candy cigarettes. I'm like, this is like a
Wow.
Lifetime Hallmark Christmas movie.
I'm so
And
glad that you're bringing
yeah.
that perspective because I've never
Like
thought of that.
to a T, and the hot chocolate, forget everything. This whole
The
movie
big
has that.
city woman and the small town guy.
Right.
Wow, you're blowing my mind.
Everything about
Yeah.
this is so that's why I was like, oh, this must be their version of this type of Christmas movie.
You know, I'm such an idiot. They have acknowledged, they have said that they wanted to do something like a Hallmark movie, but I thought they just sort of meant in the like general tone of it. I didn't make that connection of, yeah, they're all about, yeah, big city career women who come back to the small town. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other big theme that we already kind of touched on is like living in the moment. You got the Trailhead Troubadours who take Tussleville Talent Tonight. They take that even further where they're like, we don't even tell people where we are. You have to literally walk through the woods. You have to like discover us. And I think that, and again, I don't know that this is all conscious on Matt's part, but like Tussleville Talent Tonight and the Trailhead Troubadours are like two extensions of his own work. Because like Matt has released over 25,000 songs and it's all under different band names that unless you really look into it, you wouldn't be able to connect. And so it's up to people to just kind of discover him by putting poop into Spotify or by putting your town name into Spotify. And so you just kind of come upon it. And then with Tussleville Talent Tonight, if you listen to Matt's podcasts, it's all about his work in various different forms of media. And something that I've noticed is like he's very stubborn to work with, and his bandmates and the people working with him, he'll be like, no, I don't like that idea. No, I don't like that idea. And then a few months will go by and he'll be like, what about this idea? And so it's funny to see that kind of expressed here with Jimmy and with Poopy, who are like, what if we recorded it? Or what if we, and he eventually kind of, relents and does it. Yeah.
Did you guys ever
Well,
watch public access TV shows?
oh,
Do
not
you
with
have that?
any regularity, but yes, sometimes I did. Actually, for a couple months after grad school, I volunteered at a public access station.
Yeah,
Uh,
when I was interning at our local cable station, I had to film the public access different TV shows. What a time,
th-
right? Like
that rocks. That was my parents forcing me to get off the couch while I was
oh, okay,
unemployed.
hey,
Like
that's pretty cool.
you got to do something to get something on your resume. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. So it was me
Mhm.
and the high school students getting their volunteer
Mhm.
hours.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
I operated a camera on the local Kitchener, Ontario version of Regis and Kathy Lee, basically.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I had to record I would control the camera and teleprompter for some religious shows.
Nice.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
No shortage of those on public access.
Oh, no.
Yeah, our Long Island station, it was just like all pretty much like just back to back. But then occasionally you would get like a 30-minute block of like the wildest, coolest thing that someone was just making on VHS and
Did you
putting
ever?
in.
Andrew's brother had a public access show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so that was
Oh.
cool to like catch. But yeah, and then I would have to go through the VHSs. And then you had, I remember one of my jobs was going through and making sure nothing was like X rated. Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
That was fun.
And did that, was there a lot of that? Did that get sent in?
Not as much as you would think, but just like with the VHS player playing, starting, stopping. Wait, is that weird? No, this is good to go. Yeah. It's part of my job.
I suspect they like public access partly because it's sort of outmoded. Like, everything is public access now. We all have YouTube channels and podcasts and stuff. So the idea of like, applying that do-it-yourself thing to, this, like going to an actual TV station and working through those channels. They must like that.
And the idea of just, it was a 30-mile radius you can catch it?
Something like that.
Yeah. It's good.
I mean, Seth, I'm sure you've probably read his book, The Motern Method, his manifesto for creativity, which I recommend to everyone. It'll get you pumping your fist about creating your next project. And something that comes across in that book is, he's at this intersection of thinking that like making art is the act of making art and devoting a life to making art is the most important thing in the world. But also like, anything you create isn't all that important in the grand scheme of things. And even your lifestyle isn't that important in the grand scheme of things when you have other obligations like kids and family. So like, he's writing a lot about how like you can't get hung up on any one project. It's okay to rush it a little bit. It's okay to make it put out, just always be moving on to the next project. And you see that in some of his more personal music too. Like obviously he does these poop songs and stuff on Assembly Line, but then his more personal albums will also be sort of like he'll devote time to them, but they'll also be done on a schedule, and there's a certain amount of like good enough ethos to them. I think partly too because he just likes the unfussed over, slightly spontaneous style that creates. But yeah, you see that in this movie too. Like this movie is part of a lot of these movies, collectively form this ongoing dialogue about what is art, how should it be made, what is it like to devote your life to art, how seriously to take art, etc.
There's a pretty good encapsulation of that at the end of this movie, because after you've seen The Most Amazing Thing, it's like, all right, and now back to JP McGee with another spoken word. And the movie just ends, and it ends in the exact same place where it starts. Nothing has changed. And like Michelle, you brought up, all of this information is relayed to people. One of my favorite scenes is when Alyssa is leaving and she's like, how did you figure out what I was wearing? Did you find an old security camera or something? And he's like, no, actually. And he explains everything that he did. And she's just like, oh, that was going to be my second guess, and walks out the door. And it's like it's a community. It's like a Twilight Zone episode of like a world that lives in a snow globe kind of.
Yeah.
no one can get out and no one can care. Like almost no one is allowed to really emote in the movie. And you can say that's stylistic because, that's a choice because they're non-actors and it's easier to kind of limit the range. But you just saw someone from the beyond come back. You just saw someone propose to someone. Like it's all of the trappings of like a Hollywood ending, right? Everything gets wrapped up, right? We just talked about Heavyweights,
Beautiful film.
At the end, everyone's like cheering and it's like, yeah, and it's a freeze frame. In this, there is no freeze frame. Life goes on. The show continues, and there's no expression of like, well, how do we top that? No, it's just one segment among many, and the show will go on.
and that's beautiful. Maybe that's what life should be.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I just love what this movie says about like time and appreciation. I have a tattoo of Kevin McGee singing the
I
song from
know.
the end of the movie. It's one of the only movie related tattoos that I have.
And you showed that to McGee, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was one of
That's
the most
wild.
stressful moments of my
What did he
life.
say?
He was just like, wow, why would you do that? And I was like, I don't know, man. But I've seen him a few times since then. And every time he's like, let me see that again. And I'm like, it's aging worse than you are, McGee.
What made you get his face?
I genuinely like how Will was talking about that moment with the two sons. Like that ending I think is incredible. Very emotional,
Yeah.
incredible. It's so funny to just sing what just happened in the
Mm-hmm.
movie. But McGee rules as a performer. He rules as a singer. Like he's genuinely a good singer. And he's like staring down straight at you into the
Mm-hmm.
Oh
camera.
yeah.
And again, like it's the idea that the song expresses, which is like, look, if you waste your time staring at the past, and that could also translate into media. Like if you waste your time just watching movies or watching old recorded public access shows, you're going to miss out on the joys of the present. And like one thing that I like about what they say about time travel in this movie, which is also really unique kind of to this movie, is you can go into the past, but you can't change anything. You can observe and you can put the past to rest with Uncle Dan. But the past is frozen.
Right.
You can just kind of walk around. And that's why it's not like this huge temptation for them to like, let's go back and do it. It's just like, oh, you just go back and you kind of are a creep. You're just spying on people. So that's why I got it. I love the conclusion of this movie.
Mm.
It's
I,
everything that I want out of a movie is the conclusion of Magic Spot.
I also think there's something that coalesces here with the movie's attitude towards art and the creative process, where like if you're younger and you haven't defined yourself or you haven't created that much, I think there can sometimes be a lot of pressure on yourself on what you do create. But then as you create more and more, maybe even if you monetize your ability to create in some way, you have to become less precious about the work. It becomes
Mhm.
much more of an assembly line process. And also, as you accumulate more life experience, you realize that no one thing is going to change your life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if something comes along that you create that is successful in some way, that does not sustain a life. And so it just becomes about this constant it becomes about the assembly line as much as anything. And that assembly line, you have to take the satisfaction out of that. I say this as somebody who's recorded hundreds of podcasts. It's like no one has changed my life, but
Right.
over the years the gradual accumulation of them has. And yeah, I think that coalesces with just the movie's attitude towards life, where it's
Mm.
you can't stress out about any one event, or you can't get overly sentimental about any one event either. It's nice to have those memories, which is why you can press the record button a couple of times, but you
Mhm.
also have to just keep moving, because that's what
Right.
life is. It's the motion.
Right. I feel bad for Tess, but Dan comes back and he's just like, I'm moving on now. I mean, of course, in Dan's reality, he's been in the Beyond for like 46 years or something before Poopy
Well,
comes
he
back
has
for
a
him.
good explanation of like, I think this ring should go to,
Right.
Walter. And she's like, Tess was great, by the way. Shout out
Oh yeah.
to
Love her.
Tess's.
Yeah.
She's great.
And
Yeah.
he's not saying that he doesn't love her anymore,
That's right.
Yep.
or that it might not continue in some other
Right.
realm. Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. So I just want to run through some of the characters if we can quickly. So we already mentioned him, Poopy McMillan, played by Chris Peterson. How do you guys feel about Poopy?
I love the nap blanket.
I
Yeah.
mean, I can sympathize. It's tough being chronically fatigued.
Yeah, I relate more to Poopy than anyone else in this movie because I can also fall asleep, and when sometimes when the going gets tough, I'm like, I think I'm gonna go to bed. you know.
I love how everyone was just like, oh man, he needs to take a nap. Oh yeah, you don't need to come in, just wave, you know?
Right.
Ruby needs his naps.
Yes.
We get
Yes.
it.
You know, a character I love is Sharon Scalzo as their cousin, who
Mm-hmm.
has the daughter, who of course grows up to become H. And I don't know this for certain, but based on the evidence on screen, I think that what's clearly happened is, you know, she had a child, and so now it's harder for her to come out and film. So they go to her
Right.
place to film,
Right.
and you know the child is there and obviously likes to be very close to her mom, and so they figured out a way
Mm-hmm.
to not only like incorporate that into the scene, but create this huge like make it an essential part of the structure of the movie, where this child then becomes an adult character, which I think speaks to you know what they're able to do with the circumstances at hand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're such good. I've been with them now for several days of filming, and watching them work it's very intense because they're very nice and, you know, lighthearted, but at the same time they have all of these moving parts happening. And when you watch them interact with the people who are acting, and, you know, some of these people are there for 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours, they'll start to give suggestions. Like, well, what if we did it like this? And I mean, I've done it too. I've been like, hey, what if I did that? And they're always like, no, no, because there are things that are playing on other ideas, but their ability to improvise like with life situations is amazing. Like Michelle, you mentioned earlier, all of the interesting cuts, and there's some really interesting angles. It's because they're filming in people's
Right.
homes, you know,
Yeah.
and if the camera tilted up just a little bit, on the Blu-ray, they're talking about how for all the shots where Matt is talking to Sharon when they're at Sharon's house, the girl who's sitting in Sharon's lap was behind him, like playing on the couch, jumping around. And so they had to like position it just so that you couldn't see her. And then when you do the reverse on Sharon, you would see the same kid.
Mm.
It's amazing. I love Sharon Scalzo. She's one of my favorite. I think my other thigh is probably going to get a Sharon Scalzo tattoo. I'm just not sure which quote to go with, but I love her. I think she's got some of the best like comedic sensibilities. Like, oh my god, yeah.
By the way, the fact that you have a Kevin McGee tattoo is great and really speaks to something else that's special about these movies, where, you know, to a lot of the people who are in them, they really only think about these movies when Matt and Charlie come to the house to film with them,
Mm-hmm.
or they go meet them. And then it doesn't interact with their daily lives at all, except that they can tell their friends and family, "Oh, look, I have an IMDb page. Isn't that
Right.
neat?" And but then across America are little pockets of people for whom they are superstars. And
Yep.
you know, like I remember when they were early in the pandemic, the Spectacle Theater in New York was doing this like online streaming retrospective of all the films. And there was this chat, and you know, you would see like as the weeks go by, people becoming more and more familiar. And by week 5, when Kevin McGee shows up, like it's pandemonium in the chat. Like people are so
Mm-hmm.
excited to see Kevin McGee at this point. Or like, you know, I think we were at the same Motern extravaganza in Danvers, where this might be where you first showed him that tattoo. But like I remember Kevin McGee comes in, and like it's like what I imagine it's like when Frank Sinatra walked in a room,
Mm-hmm.
where like
Oh
just
yeah.
the energy of the room shifted. Like, oh my god, it's Kevin McGee's here. And like Sinatra, he comes for 10 minutes, he goes on stage, he does 2 songs, 10 more minutes to hobnob, pose for photos, then he's gone, you know.
Yep.
uh and I'm sure in his life he's just like a guy. But
Right.
in that
Yeah.
room, yeah.
Yeah. So Michelle, Kevin McGee was Matt's boss.
I'm
Like that's
wondering how these people all got together. I'm very
yeah,
curious
it's
on
just
that.
people that Matt and Charlie know. Like Charlie's sister, she's the woman with the dog who doesn't fetch
Oh,
anymore.
mm-hmm.
Walter's parents are Matt's parents in real life. Alyssa is Matt's wife,
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth. So yeah, it's all just, you know, and as we've said, as you watch all the movies, you see these people kind of come back and play different characters. And even though they're non-actors, it's still like, oh yeah, here's Milhouse G as, one of the Committee of Light members. But then in Slingshot Cops, he's playing this totally different character, but it's still him. And one of the things that I love about this, kind of like what Will was saying, was like, it's truly creating something out of nothing. And that's what Matt and Charlie have done. Like Matt and his music, Charlie and Matt with the movies. It's very like democratic, it's not, oh, well, this is the person that Hollywood has selected to star in this big movie. And so it's going to be pushed to you and, you're going to see their face everywhere. It's just their aunts and uncles and friends and coworkers, but they create this like other Hollywood, this Hollywood of New England, to where you have people who are in movies. And like even Will Sloan, there's a song about Will Sloan. There's a character in Boston Johnny named Toronto's own Will Sloan. And so even though now, Will, have you acted in any of the movies?
No, but I might in future. This has been discussed. I mean, now that now that he's opening it up to have various writers and podcasters who have championed him in the past. The offer has been extended to me, and it's just a matter of like, if I can make it out to Danvers at that time. But I'd love to. Maybe would that be flying too close to the sun? I don't know. Seth, you said you were on the set. Did you work on the new one, Evil Puddle?
Yeah, so they filmed some of Evil Puddle where I work, and I'm in it, and I've gone out to film some of the other stuff with them, and it's great. The other great thing about this whole troupe is like, it's definitely not a don't meet your heroes kind of a situation. Like they really are all super nice and very grounded and funny, and like, like talking with Tom Scalzo about music or like movies. It's like, I'm sitting here talking to this dude who I've watched on my screen, and like, it also plays into this whole idea of like, what we perceive on our screen becomes reality, and like what's on our screen is more real to us than what's happening around the world. Like it's like, oh, these terrible things are happening. Well, okay, but I'm really invested in this movie or this TV show, right? But then you meet those people and it's like, oh, you are just normal. So it's a very fun experiment in like celebrity and like we were saying earlier, like who gets to make a movie and what does it get to be, and it's cool. And like McGee in this movie, his name is Dan Port. That's because there's a real dude named Dan Port.
Is that Is that a different Dan Port who used to?
No, that's the Dan Port who is written into our show.
Okay, because that was a question for you. I was like, Dan Port.
Yeah, and so one of the craziest things about Matt, and there's many, is you can call him. Like he puts his phone number in his songs. It's on his Twitter profile. It's in his movies.
That call-in feature is always or always only on his show, his podcast.
Oh no, it's his cell phone.
Not only that, but in one of his movies, Local Legends, he puts his phone number on the screen halfway through and says, "This is my phone number. Call me anytime," which I think is the only example I've ever seen that. I certainly haven't seen Martin Scorsese put his phone number in a movie.
No.
For some reason.
Like for movie lovers, right? So, Will, you've been writing about movies for how many years? 20 plus?
A while, yeah.
So like, you obviously have a big love for the art form, but what a special like little hole there is in this world where one of your favorite film actors and writers has written a song about you. Like that's
or and named a character after me. Again, Martin Scorsese hasn't done this. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons why it goes beyond just like, oh, you should watch these movies because they're great movies. And if that was all that there is, that would be enough, because the movies genuinely are so good. But beyond that, there's this whole other world of experience that you get to do where you can go to the extravaganza once a year and see all these actors and listen to a 7-hour concert.
Is that what the extravaganza is? Is
Yeah.
meeting the all the players of the movies show up and what it entails of
Yeah,
this
well,
event?
I mean, the year I went, it was a day-long event where it began with 2 back-to-back movie premieres, which
Wow.
I think he said he regretted that. I think he said it was too many. I don't know. I could have done a third. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
he showed Heard She Got Married, sorry, Heard She Got Murdered and Boston Johnny, like 10-minute intermission between them, and then he launched it into a 7-hour concert. And I would say there were probably 120 people there or
Yeah.
so.
Mm-hmm.
A number of most of them that year, just people who had flown in from all across the continent to be there. But as well as there were people from his movies, which means his friends and family were there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Most of them were there for like a long time, but Kevin McGee he knows that he's special, so he came in he doesn't want to saturate the market with himself.
Yeah. Uncle Dan, Kevin McGee, Michelle. How did you feel about Uncle Dan?
I love Uncle Dan, especially when he's singing at the end. That was like my favorite part.
Yeah.
The fact that
Yeah.
he's known as Uncle Dan Port, including in the newspaper, I think is a great
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
and the fact that he's just sort of understood to be Tusselville's favorite son, and there needs to be no explanation. And then, when you see him at the end, no explanation is necessary. Of course, he's Tusselville's favorite son. I love his entrance. It's like Harry Lime in The Third Man. You spend an hour just hearing about Uncle Dan, and then like I've seen this movie with an audience, and there's just a gasp when he shows up.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. He's great. This is one of my favorite Kevin McGee roles. I mean, Frank Stone is amazing. I love the officer that he plays in Heard She Got Married, but like, I don't know. There's something special about him here. There's no air of like sinister or tough. It's just, yeah. I love it. Love it so much. Alyssa, played by Elizabeth Peterson, the big city girl. I have had the "Oh Tusselville" song stuck in my head for like 3 weeks preparing for this episode.
It's good.
It's so good.
Mm-hmm. Very well performed, I think.
The music, actually, did they write it? What's the background on the music in this?
Yeah, so Tom Scalzo, who plays Buster H. McGinley, I think is his name. Something
That's
like
right.
Yeah.
that. He's the head of the Trailhead Troubadours, the cousin.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They pulled some of the music that he had done for some like electronic albums that he had put out. So they did some of that, and then I think he wrote all of the Trailhead Troubadour songs except for the Hot Chocolate song. I think Matt, but that's one good thing about them doing these movies is they just have built-in soundtracks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because Matt has 25,000 songs. So, but I love Elizabeth across all of the movies. I think that she's so good. She's got such like I guess like, I don't know, would you call it like a sweet presence? Like,
I would call it like a twinkle in the eye.
yes, precisely.
Yeah.
Yes, she's got like but it's like the whole face. Like she's got a twinkle in the face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The best way possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love like her costume with like the dress and the boa, because it's like, are we starting to slip into absurd or not? And I feel like it never really crosses that line, but it's like just enough over there.
Yeah. Like, let me represent the big city.
Yes.
Back at home.
And then, Walter Moore, played by Matt Farley, host of Tusselville Talent Tonight. There's a moment in this movie when Walter and Alyssa are at the fireside. It's probably my second favorite moment. And he just has a little bit of whipped cream on his face, and the camera just holds on him for maybe 5 seconds. He doesn't move. He doesn't talk.
Probably the most sensual that Matt has ever got on screen.
Yes, it's great. And that part is funny because it's like, okay, so we're doing this like romantic like fireside chat thing, but it's all so like middle school play levels of romance or affection, And one thing, Michelle, that's just kind of a weird feature, but also is like just so charming. Like I think there's absolutely no swearing in any of the movies.
I think
Me,
Matt claims that he has never sworn.
well, I
And
don't know.
that's what he says. He says that people in grade school offered him good money to
Yeah,
upwards
I've
of
heard
Good
that.
money.
$5 to say a bad word, and he
Hmm.
didn't. So, I mean,
Yep.
it's difficult for me to believe, but that's what he says.
I wonder if
Yeah.
it
So,
counts if he has a dream and he swears.
Yeah.
oh,
He says gosh darn a lot, which as far
oh
as
my
I'm
gosh.
concerned, I mean that's putting a bad word in your head. That's
Sure.
making, that's making you
Sure.
say the bad word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes on the podcast, he'll say, like, he won't say the actual swear, but he'll say, like, and then they said, a hole. And just hearing him say that, I'm like, oh my goodness, Matt.
Well, I even
That's
noticed when he proposes and she says yes, they don't kiss, they just hug.
no kissing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I was
So,
fine with, but the
so that's
overall
like
tone.
another
Mm-hmm.
kind of interesting wrinkle to all the movies is like, there's no profanity, no sex. Occasionally, because there's some movies that are like throwbacks to slashers, you'll get like maybe someone taking their top off, but it's not, there's obviously no nudity or anything like that.
I also feel that even that has been phased out of these movies a little bit.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
that there was a little bit of that, yeah, like bikini slasher kind of stuff in Freaky Farley, but I get the sense that maybe they were just a little bit uncomfortable with it, or they felt that it didn't quite fit into the world they were creating. So it, as the style got refined, that got left
Yes.
out. Mhm.
Yeah. They filtered out all of the dross to only leave behind the pure art.
I just put like Copernicus laugh emoji.
Oh God, that's
Yeah.
that's one of their best jokes, I think,
Yeah,
honestly.
that was really good. And the worm dance, I laughed at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two more things I'll just say about Farley and Roxburgh there's one thing that I think Charlie said that on has always stuck with me, and that I feel like is maybe the best, like, one thing maybe anybody has ever said about low budget filmmaking. Where sorry, now I'm hyping it up way too
I
much,
know.
but it was at that, like, online streaming event. They were playing local
Mm,
legends, and somebody in the chat said, well, why does Sharon have a wedding ring on if she's supposed to be single? And Charlie Roxburgh said, better to let them keep their wedding ring on rather than take it off and lose an hour of shooting trying to find a lost wedding ring. I
mm,
think that's powerful. That's good advice. And yeah, I would also say I remember at that event, that weekly streaming thing, Slingshot Cops played, I think, the week that the George Floyd protests were happening. And so
wow.
everybody liked Slingshot Cops. I think there were a few people made some jokes about, or made comment on it because, sentiment towards law enforcement was not uniformly positive at that time. And I
Right.
remember Charlie saying something like, we'd like to make these movies where it's like the best possible version of that world, or take you to
Right.
a better version of that world. And there's so much of that in Magic Spot. It really is like, it's funny what it accomplishes, where, like, it does nothing to make this small town look like anything that it's not. It shows you the bad pizza with the provolone on top, but it's also still, like, idealized in this way. It's this better world where, like, everybody watches the local public access talent show and they all take part in it, and everybody's just making art and being creative. One of the many pleasures these movies offer are just like a glimpse into a more utopian world.
It's like you're looking into a snow globe for a little bit. And, we start out with the great Jim McHugh as JP McD talking about the cold. And then we end with him talking about, all right, cold's over, time to get back to work for the tourists. And it's just such a nice capsule.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've mentioned before, it's the work of people who know what they're doing. And
Mhm.
I wish that more people would give these films like a chance, because there's such rich text there for life and for movie making. and truly inspiring. Like, you should watch these movies and think to yourself, oh, I can make a movie. Why am I not making a movie? And something that Matt says a lot is everyone should go make a movie. Just do it. Like, it's something to do, and you'll have something to say with your time, you know? And I know, Will, I know from following you and Justin, and there is an aspect of these movies in this world that, like, it makes you feel like you need to share it. And for all the movies that I'm constantly trying to push on people, it seems like there's resistance with these movies. Do you experience that?
Well, something that I've felt is I feel like on my podcast, like we've been talking about them for years, and we've written a book on them. We've had screenings, articles in various places. Justin has released them on Blu-ray, and I look at the Motern movies as it's a fun measure of like how much influence can I have, where it's like if I put every ounce of muscle I have behind one thing, then maybe after 5 years somebody will watch River Beast. It's
Right.
like
Right.
it's gratifying when they do, but it's also humbling, where it's like, wow, there's you got to work really hard to get anybody to watch anything that's a little bit off the beaten path.
You had said something, I think you said it on Important Cinema Club. And when you said it, I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I've been doing. Like, we started this podcast a few years ago, and I would have started with Motern movies, but it's like I wanted to wait until we had an audience of people, so
Yes.
so that if only 5 of our listeners watch Magic Spot, to me it will be like, I'm done. Like, just that Michelle watched it and loved it. It's like, great.
I mean, this is how it has grown. It has been a genuinely word of mouth phenomenon, and I've said this before. I believe within 5 years we can get them on the Criterion Channel. You know,
absolutely. There's no reason, none, why Criterion can't do a retrospective of their movies. They've been doing it for smaller filmmakers. Yeah, absolutely.
I say 5 years. It could happen sooner. I think there's momentum. There's a critical mass behind this. Enough important people are starting to see these movies that I think this will happen. And if we all work together, if we all do our part, this is one political cause you can get behind that might see change in your lifetime.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I think more people should get other people to watch these movies, and it's the same thing as if you were, I went to see Megalopolis and people asked me, should I go see it? And I said, yes, but it's the same exact thing. And chronicling Matt's career over the last 10 years, as I've been diving deep into like every aspect of, like going back and listening to every episode of the podcast and reading your book and it's just amazing how much momentum has been gained in like recent years. Like you mentioned Peter Kaplowski, he gets the screener for Freaky Farley and then forgets about it. And so how many Peter Kaplowskis are out there, that have these screeners just sitting on a shelf somewhere, and it's like all of these things could go off at the same time, and then boom.
Yeah. I mean, I think these movies, something like Local Legends, I feel like is sort of undeniable.
Yeah.
And it's like some of these movies are also like their careers are like a message in a bottle, where they were completely outside, far from any infrastructure of filmmaking, and then just over time people have discovered it.
Yeah, it's almost like if you don't catch it live, you don't catch it at all. But the
Truer
opposite.
words were never spoke. Yes.
All right. Hey, Will, thank you so much for joining us. This is awesome.
My pleasure. Great to talk to both of you.
Thank you. It was good to meet you.
Wow.
Wow.
What a conversation.
I know. I forgot to ask him. Maybe it's best that I didn't. I could just ask you.
What?
But
were you going to ask him what noodle he would be?
No.
Oh.
No. Well, actually, I have two things. I know that the provolone on pizza was kind of supposed to be gross, but we're going to try that, right?
I've actually tried that beach pizza. Wow. After one of the extravaganzas, Matt was like, hey, everybody who comes to this event, come meet me at the beach the next morning. And he bought beach pizza with provolone for everyone to eat.
That's fantastic. I love that. That's
Yeah.
great. But my other question, and I've asked myself this after I watched this, and also I'm reading this book called The Midnight Library, which has very much to do with like experiencing other paths that you could have taken in your life, which kind of adds, it's kind of like a time travel-y theme. But if you could travel to a magic spot, a rock, where would you go?
Like if I could be on the magic spot and announce a year?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I would travel back to my childhood bedroom and watch Nick at Night.
Oh my.
Yeah. That's it. That's the level I'm at, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I would probably try to go back maybe and just like observe myself as a kid. Like I'm just curious.
Right.
You know, you have memories,
Yes.
but how you remember things like it can't possibly be the way that they were.
Yeah.
So I'd be very curious to just like follow myself for a day.
I would love that. Or even going back to Christmas 1996 or something.
Sure.
And just see, like, observing and feeling what that felt like. I would love to see my family in the living room. But going back to my Nick at Night thing, I was talking to Krista, and you know, when we were kids, well, early tweens, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, we would write to Nick at Night stars and get autographs.
Right.
And I'm like, I can't believe we never wrote to Woody Harrelson on Cheers. And so we were joking like, oh, get the DeLorean, get the magic spot.
Right.
I'm coming back. It's more charming when you're a kid. I'm 37 writing to Woody Harrelson for his autograph. Not charming anymore.
You never know.
Yeah. Anyway.
I went straight to the source and asked Matt on some of the things. So like for a budget, it's like a good guess of, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000, maybe $3,000, something like that. This movie has a 3.8 average rating on Letterboxd.
Nice.
This is not part of the Criterion Collection, unfortunately, and it's not yet in the National Film Registry, but I believe one day it will be. And the production days of this was January of 2022 to May of 2022. And, you know, as this is something that they're making not full time, it's not like they were shooting for months and months. Like they're shooting, you know, nights and weekends here and there. So pretty impressive to put that together in,
absolutely,
you know, just a few months.
How long does it usually take Matt to edit?
It's a good question. You should send him a text or call him and ask.
He would
love it.
Does he answer texts?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What's his number?
His number is 603-644-0048.
Whoa. You know me in numbers. Slow down.
Okay, sorry. I have that because that is the exact cadence that he reads it on his podcast. And I've heard him say it like 500 times by now.
Okay, 603.
I can't not do it in the voice.
Well, you could sing. Okay, 603-644.
603-644-0048.
Okay.
And hey, listeners, if you watched Magic Spot and you want to ask Matt, I'm sure he would love it if you would give him a call or send him a text message.
Okay. Wait, what was my question?
How long does it take you to edit?
I'm curious on Magic Spot specifically.
Sure.
Do you think?
Are you texting him right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
I'm curious how long it takes for him to get back to you.
I hope it's in like 3 years from now, and I'm like, who is this? That would be great. Actually.
Yeah.
He's going to be like, movie friends, what? That would be great too.
That's true, yeah. He might have no idea who we are.
Oh, hi, I'm a big fan! Exclamation point.
He responded to you?
Yes! Wow.
Like I said, listeners, if you watched Magic Spot, reach out to Matt Farley. He'll probably text you back.
I'm going to say Magic Spot was quite special.
What did he say? How long did it take to edit?
The 3 dots disappeared, so.
Oh, okay.
Oh, never mind. He said I edited as we filmed it. So if we filmed on a weekend, I'd spend my evenings putting it all together through the week. It was good because if I noticed something we needed, we could grab the shot the next time we filmed.
Very economical.
Thank you for answering. What?
All right, let's go into a segment of the show we call Happies and Crappies.
It's time for Happies and Crappies. Happies and Crappies. It's time for Happies and Crappies. Happies and Crappies. It's time for
All right. My happy for this movie is both Uncle Dan and Alyssa singing. And my crappy for the movie, I have nothing. I have nothing. No crappy. Maybe a poopy, but no crappy. How about you?
Well, my happy was Danport singing, and specifically the miss out on the joys of the present.
Yeah.
And I don't have a crappy. Yeah, I don't.
So we asked some friends on Twitter what they thought. Sean Shank.
Whoa!
Oh, well,
Sorry,
what?
it continues. Let me know if you ever want to roll in one of our movies.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Yes. Now I'm sweating. I'm sweating.
Michelle Rubenstein might be in a future Motern Media film. Yeah.
Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
Wow, this is great. I don't know how to continue now. I mean, this is breaking news.
I want to be like the town cat lady or something. I think we can modernize the cat lady, but maybe it's
Okay.
just like the girl who's just always feeding the cats in the robe or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So pretty much me.
Okay. All right. So we asked some friends on Twitter what they thought. Sean Shank at Tyler_Burnham says, Magic Spot is my favorite Motern Media movie so far. It shows how well Matt Farley is able to write story elements that build up to great payoffs by the end of the movie. And I agree.
Well said. Yeah.
Safety James at Scamp Dastard.
No.
Yeah, that's the word. Says, this was my first ever Motern film, and it might still be the peak. One of the best depictions of the sentimentality of small town life out there. Ra at Rashan Jamal says, to celebrate Seth Vember, I'll watch this movie and keep it to myself if I don't like it.
Oh.
No, Rashan, we want to hear your thoughts.
No, give us your
Please.
happies and crappies.
Please. Jim D at Marduk Mayberry. Now, Jim D is a great dude.
Mm-hmm.
Met him, hung out with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's got incredible videos on deep theories about movies. Pretty amazing.
Wow.
So he says, bear with me here. Given that the Committee of Light's early visits are obviously second or third, at least, attempts at accomplishing their mission by establishing trust with Walter, and during their later visits, they seem entirely aware of their previous doings, it then follows that their younger selves from their failed missions are unaccounted for, since years pass between attempts, and as they cannot allow Walter to see their younger selves, can we conclude that they have quote unquote iced themselves and tucked the invisible bodies away somewhere in the Tussleville woods? Those guys just have bad vibes. So, in other words, you can only go back to the date that you're on when you announce a year. So, if they go back and try to save Jimmy Overstreet and fail, they have to wait another year before coming back. And so, he is suggesting that perhaps when they come back, they kill the younger versions of themselves so that there's not multiple versions running around, and then hide their invisible bodies in the woods.
Would that work?
I don't know. There are many rules to this magic spot.
I was like,
it's
so tight. There are no loopholes or anything.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, to anything,
There's a lot.
Room for discussion
and
theory. So, well, I'll be thinking about that tonight. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jim T.
Thank you.
So there's some people that we do know. Now we go to a segment of the show where we hear from people that we don't know. It's called Half Star, 3-Star, 5-Star. All right, so these are reviews from letterboxd.com. We start with a half-star review, which is the lowest rating that you can give a movie. We go all the way up to a 5-star review, which is the highest rating that you can give a movie. And for the half-star review, do you have a voice?
Is there a way you could perform it like a troubadour?
Wow. Like sing it?
Yeah, like sing-songy.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
My second Farley Roxburgh movie. And look, I've tried, but they are thoroughly not for me in any capacity. One of the worst cinematic experiences of my life. And I've watched countless terrible things that I've hated on a visceral level. Still trying to figure out how this movie that clocks in at an hour and 27 minutes feels like it takes as long as Evolution of a Filipino Family to finish. Evolution of a Filipino Family, by the way, is 647 minutes. So this person is saying that this movie feels that long to them. Yeah, so obviously I disagree with this person's review.
Did they say the worst cinematic viewing?
One of the worst cinematic experiences of my life.
That's
And I've watched countless terrible things that I've hated on a visceral level.
wow.
Yeah.
I think he needs a cookie.
Needs a candy cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
3-star review says, this movie is weird because there's very little good about it. The dialogue is awkward, the acting is wooden. It basically looks like a student film. Yet, it was incredibly engrossing in a way, and for reasons I cannot explain even to myself.
I agree.
And
To
that,
the feeling. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 5-star review says, in my utopia, this is what all film looks like. The community presented is so unique, absurd, and specific, and the plot is hilarious and heartfelt. Matt Farley is charismatic as ever, and Charles Roxburgh is on point behind the camera. But for me, Chris Peterson steals the show as the bouncy ball wielding chronic napper and hero of time, Poopy. Acclimate, Poopy, acclimate.
I forgot about the bouncing ball. How could I forget about that? Because they're on our honeymoon, Aunt was obsessed with bouncy balls. And so everywhere we traveled, he
Wow.
was just like bouncing one on the boardwalks in California. Like he has a
What
collection
on
of
earth?
them. Yes.
What on?
I
How have I
know.
never heard of this?
I know. And Aunt would have loved the name Poopy because that's just Aunt. And
Sure.
so we really need to
Yeah,
watch
you know
this
what?
together.
On a nice Christmas night,
I'll work this
just
into the rotation
cuddle
of
up
holiday
and
movies.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And don't tell him, and he'll be so surprised.
Well,
How did you feel about the Acclimate Poopy scene?
I was chanting along.
You were?
Yeah.
Wow.
You weren't?
Well, I mean, I don't know, but it's great because you get all the townspeople.
I
And they're all
know.
watching.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
You have to chant.
All right. So, Magic Spot
Mm-hmm.
2022. We rate movies as a schmovie, a movie, or a film. We rate it 1 through 5 stars and give our final thoughts and recommendations. You want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
All right. What did you guess?
I guessed in the corner, as always, a 5-star film.
Wow. Okay. Very good. Very good. When I originally watched this, I rated it 4 stars, which for me means a great movie. And yeah, after sitting with it and just learning about it and marinating on it, I think I'm going to say that. Yeah. 5-star film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you're recommending it?
I recommend every person on earth watch this movie. Yes. All right. What about you?
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. For you, I guessed that you were going to say this is a 3.5 schmovie.
Okay. So this is a movie friends first of what I'm about to say.
Oh my. There's breaking news all over this
I know.
episode.
I can't rate this.
Oh, okay.
That's not the first because I couldn't rate 2001 either. I actually cannot assign a number to this, but what I can assign is that this is a film with schmovie sprinkles.
Very good.
Yeah,
Very good.
and that's not a bad thing. It has
it's a
like
great thing.
the sprinkles of schmovie, all the things that make schmovies great. But this is a film, and I have been struggling with this, and every day I've been thinking like, what do we feel today? And I'm like, there's no number I can assign to this right now.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
it's a film with schmovie sprinkles.
Do you recommend it?
I do recommend it. Yeah. I know I keep overusing the term cozy and safe, but I'd be like, here, have fun with this. Oh
Hey,
my
if we
God.
make you feel cozy and safe, we'd love it if you give us a rating and a review wherever you're listening. 5 stars, 1 star? I don't know. Please don't do that.
No,
That'd be
don't do
weird.
that's, ooh.
We'd also love it if you'd send us an email, moviefriendspodcast@gmail.com. I am begging on hands and knees, please, if you have seen this movie because of this podcast, just send us an email and tell us what you think, because I love talking to people about this movie. You can also support the show, patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. $5 a month gets you access to all of our additional shows, gets you access to our patron-only Discord, and you get to vote on upcoming movies and monthly themes. It's a whole lot, folks. Come on. Look, I'm just going to say it. If you don't sign up, we're going to stop doing this show. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
This is all on you. One person. If one person... Think of us like a little choo-choo. Okay? We're a little choo-choo. And if you don't put in that coal over this next week, we're done. We're out of steam.
I'm good to go. It's been a good run. So
Yeah, hey, look, and hey, to me, doing Magic Spot, that's like the crowning achievement. So
I mean, if we
I'm
went
done
out
too.
on Magic Spot,
Oh man, that's awesome, actually. So next week, maybe. I
maybe.
don't know. I'm also incredibly excited about this one. And this is a movie that has almost been done a few times and never has gotten around to it. Next week, we'll be talking about Paris, Texas from 1984, directed by Wim Wenders. It's 145 minutes and currently streaming on the Criterion channel.
I know nothing about this.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that's in the back of my mind is you're 100% correct, where we were supposed to do this one a bunch of times. And in fact, in the beginning of our podcast, you made a choice to take it off because you're like, we actually have to do some lighter things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's concerning.
Don't take that to heart. Don't let that concern you. All right. Hey, thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you very much for listening. Till next week when we're talking about Paris, Texas from 1984. Have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Music by Anthony Vicora. If you like the show, please subscribe and give us a rating. It really helps us find new friends. Thanks.